Hi, welcome to the third unit of Natural Resource Management. In this unit, I am going to talk about sustainable land management. So, in the initial part, I'll be talking about land utilization, then we'll move on to the land degradation, and finally, we'll be talking about sustainable soil management. So, before going into the details, let me give you a brief introduction. The land is the soil surface of earth which is not permanently covered by water. So most of the areas on earth is actually covered by oceans. So the area which is not covered by ocean, rivers or lakes is actually termed as land. And soil is a part of land. Soil is a complex mixture. It contains organic matters, gases, minerals, liquids and organisms. So it's a combination of several things. And this Earth's body of soil is actually called the pedosphere. And the soil is actually formed by the weathering of the rocks. And the basic functions of the soil, I'm just going through it. They provide a medium for plant growth, and plant growth is very much essential for all the terrestrial organisms because the plant are the primary producers, and from this energy we are getting all our energy needs. And it has a role in water storage, supply and purification, and it modifies the atmosphere. It has a main role in climate regulation. Then it is also provide a habitat for organisms. Okay, so if you look at the basic structure of the soil is having different horizons. So the topmost soil is called the O horizon or organic layer, then which is basically composed of humus, and then we have the air horizon. Air horizon is actually the top soil which is composed of minerals as well as the humus. Then we have E horizon, which is a transition between the top soil and the subsoil. In the subsoil, which is called the B horizon, which is containing deposits of minerals and as well as the metal salts. Then below that we have the C horizon of the parental rocks, and way below that we have the bare rocks, which is called the R horizon. So how land is being utilized in the utilized globally? So if you take a look at the global land utilization, we can see that the Earth's surface, 29% of Earth's surface is land, and another 71% is actually covered by oceans. So the land is actually the 29% of Earth's surface, and it's out of this 29%, 71% is called habitable land. So where all the human activities and everything is happening, and 10% is actually under ice. This the most of this 10% is in the Antarctica. So the land for surface which is not covered by water as such, but it is covered by ice. Most of the areas are permanently covered by ice. So we are not going to talk about that anymore. And 19% is actually barren land, which includes open rocks, deserts, and also the beaches. So these areas do not have any cultivation importance, or any, maybe we can say the topsoil is absent there. So we are basically interested in the 71% of the habitable land. Out of the 71% of habitable land, 50% is used for agriculture purposes. Then 37% is forest, and 11% is shrubs. 1% we have buildings, urban areas, roads, bridges, etc. And finally, we have the 1% which is actually the freshwater sources. Out of this 50% of agricultural land, 77% we are using for livestock, meat, and dairy, and 23% we are using for crop production of different crops. So these are the global scenario of land usage. So the land can be utilized for different purposes like the forest, land not available for cultivation, fallow land, net zone area, etc. In the figure you can see the picture or the graphical representation of the Wayanad district of Kerala. In here, there you can see the most of the areas in the Wayanad district is covered by forest. So dark green is the forest area. Then we have the agricultural plantations in the light green, so which constitute about the 43% of the total area. Then we have the cropland, which is only 10% around. Then building area is only 0.6%, and the water bodies constitute 1.2%. So this is the picture of the Wayanad district. So like that we can have the global scenario of the land utilization. So in this session, I'm going to talk about different land utilization, specifically agricultural utilization, pastoral, horticultural, and silvicultural land utilization. So first we will be talking about agricultural land. So what are the peculiarities of agricultural land? What are the properties of the land and soil of the agricultural land? So before going into that, we have different types of agricultural land. It can be classified as arable land, permanent crop land, or permanent pastures. The arable land are the land which is producing crops that require annual replanting. So every year we have to replant the plant. So the tillage and the plantation of new plants and the harvesting, everything happens yearly. Sometimes it happens more than one time in a year, maybe two, three times in a year can happen, especially in the case of wheat and rice. The multiple times we will be using the same area for the crop production. Such type of plants is called arable land. So in the arable land we are actually planting, and it is used for the cultivation of temporary crops. Then the permanent cropland. The permanent cropland is actually a type of agricultural area which is producing crops which do not require annual replanting. So the annual tillage, annual plantation, and annual harvesting is not required. Maybe we will be harvesting the products, but we are not removing the whole plant. Such type of planting is called a permanent cropland. Finally, we have the permanent pastures that can be natural or artificially grassland which is used for the livestock production. So whenever we are talking about the agricultural land, we will be basically talking about the arable lands. Arable lands, as I said before, it is used for the temporary cultivation of the crops, and the crops which requires at least annual replanting. Examples can be rice and paddy, uh, rice and wheat, sorry. Maybe the vegetables, those requires the annual replanting. Uh, then this arable land is one of the most important uh, it is very important in the food security and food production, and the fertility of the arable land is very much important. If you see it at a global scale, the fertility reduction in the arable land is a cause of reduced food supply. So this arable land is they are capable of producing crops. They are suitable for farming, and they are suitable for plow and tillage. And so many different types of crops can be cultivated in the arable land. It is important for food safety and food production. 11% of Earth's total land is actually arable land. So if you look at the history of this arable land, the Neolithic period onwards, the human beings, early humans are using this arable land. In the first, what they have done, they use forest fire to clear the forest and get some land for the cultivation. And that land was very much fertile, and they used for the cultivation of the plants. And by using this for repeated agricultural purposes, it lose its like fertility. So and it also changed the nearby ecosystem. So the ecosystem in the agricultural land is called agro-ecosystem. It's a modified natural ecosystem which is used for the efficient production of crops. So it can be used for animal products or for the crops, and basically it is used for crops. It is designed and intensively managed by the humans for the higher production of crops. When compared to the natural ecosystem, this agricultural ecosystem is having very simple species composition. If you take same area, same land area in a forest, it will have different types of plants. But in the agricultural field, the species diversity is very much less when compared to the natural ecosystem. And then we have the simpler energy and nutrient flow. In the natural ecosystem, we have a very complex nutrient flow because there are different types of organisms involved. But in the case of agricultural ecosystem, agro-ecosystem, the nutrient flow is very much uh, simpler than the natural ecosystem. But the agricultural ecosystem is also characterized by frequent use of agrochemicals for the as pesticides or fertilizers or plant growth regulators. So it's a totally different ecosystem we are having in the agricultural field. So in this figure, you can see what's the difference between the natural ecosystem and the agro ecosystem. The main difference I would like to point out is like the natural ecosystem is something circular, cyclic in nature. So here you can see the nutrients from the soil is actually taken up by the plants, and they use it for the growth. And after their lifetime, it will be degraded and came back into the soil. And you can see here that carbon dioxide is escaped during the degradation of the plants, but at the same time the oxygen will be taken up by the plants. The carbon dioxide from the taken up will be taken up by the plants during the time of growth. So basically This is a cyclic system. Plant take nutrients from the soil. In the soil perspective, plants will be taking the nutrients from the soil, and after it's dead and decay, it will be came back to the soil and it's again used for the plant growth. But in the agro-ecosystem, what happens is like we are using the same land for the cultivation again and again. The other feature is like the products of the agriculture will be taken away from the field. Maybe for the markets or for human consumption, we'll be taking the harvest from the plant. So the nutrients which are taken up from the land is not actually coming back into the soil. A portion of it will be harvested. So the nutrients in that one will be go away from the soil. So to compensate the loss of plant products away from the soil, we need to add fertilizers. So instead of having a cyclic system, here we have a linear system. The fertilizers, we are adding fertilizers. The components of the fertilizers is used for the plant growth, and this plant will be harvested. So even if there is a cyclic flow, but essentially it has a linear flow also. The nutrients in the fertilizers is actually used by plants, and it is harvested and it is transported elsewhere, and it is not coming back to the soil. So that's the main difference between natural ecosystem and agro-ecosystem. Agro-ecosystem, the nutrient cycles are somewhat linear in nature. So the fertilizers to the plants and plants will be harvested. So harvesting plants is actually removing nutrients from the soil. So plants are using nutrients from the land. So when we are harvesting the plants or the plant residues, it's actually we are transporting soil nutrients away from the soil. The other thing is that agriculture, the repeated agriculture actually increase the erosion, soil erosion, which also causes the nutrient loss from the soil, and flood control. Flood is a natural way of enriching the soil, but we are constructing dams for controlling the flood. So that will also affect the nutrient cycle, and we are also using the artificial fertilizers, which also change the properties of the soil. So what plants need from the soil? When we are thinking about the agricultural land or agro-ecosystem, the basic of agro-ecosystem is that the soil should be able to provide all essential nutrients for the plants. So what are the essential nutrients for the plants? You might have studied it in your plus two, but just give a brief idea. Plants have different types of nutrients. The primary nutrients are there, which include NPK. Then there are secondary macronutrients, so which need only in small quantities. The primary macronutrients NPK, they are required in high quantities, and the plant growth is directly affected by the presence of primary macronutrients. But the secondary macronutrients, they need only in small quantities, and they have something called the micronutrients, they need in very little quantity, and some nutrients like silicon and sodium, which is present in almost all type of soil, so you don't have to add it. So most of these fertilizers is having primary macronutrients NPK. Okay, so the thing is that these elements are very much essential for the plant growth. If these elements, the nutrients are absent in the soil, it will affect the plant growth. At the same time, if these elements are very much higher, present very high concentration in the soil, that also affect the plant growth, especially the micronutrients. There is a limit for these micronutrients. If it is having higher concentration, it will negatively affect the plant growth and the crop production. So this is the pictorial representation. For the plant nutrition, there are nutrients which is present in the soil, and there are nutrients which actually get from air and water. So we are basically talking about the nutrients in the soil. So for the soil, there are major nutrients or primary macronutrients, which includes nitrogen, phosphorus and potassium, and secondary macronutrients, calcium, magnesium and sulfur, and we have something called the micronutrients, which is required in very small quantities. So for an efficient agriculture, we need to provide all of these nutrients in sufficient quantities. So when we are using a land again and again for the agriculture, what's happening is like plants are harvesting, or they are actually taking all nutrients from the soil and using it for the plant growth. And after the plant growth, we will be harvesting the products and will be transporting away from the soil. So repeated cultivation leads to the loss of fertility or loss of nutrients from the soil. To overcome that, we are using fertilizers. These fertilizers can be inorganic chemical fertilizers, or it can be organic nutrients like manure or compost. So whatever fertilizer or soil amendments we are adding, uh, it will actually help the soil in some way to increase the plant production, but also it can cause the pollution of soil as well as the nearby water bodies. So the application of fertilizers should be very much controlled. Then what type of soil can be used for agriculture? The thing is that not all soils can be used for agriculture. There are some soils, certain type of soils can be used for the production of certain type of plants. So an ideal soil for agriculture should have a balance between the mineral composition, that is nutrient composition, and soil organic matter, and air and water availability in the soil. It also affect the like the crop growth is also affected by the physical properties of the plant, the physical properties of the soil, the texture of the soil, what is the density, everything affect the plant growth. So depending on the type of plant, type of soil, uh, there are so much type of requirements for the crops. And distribution of soil is actually influenced by the parental material, time, climate, organism, and topography. Ideal soil should allow the water retention and drainage, oxygen in the root zone, and nutrients to facilitate the plant growth, and it also provide the physical support for the plant. And one of the most important factors which affect the plant growth or the crop production is the pH. pH is called a master variable of a soil, because if there is a change in the pH, which can affect the nutrient availability, microbial activity, and stability of soil aggregates. So typically a soil of pH 6 to 7.5 is optimal for the plant growth, but there are some plants which is able to grow in acidic pH soils, and some plants which is also able to grow in the basic pH. But most of them will come around 6 to 7.5. So that's all about the agricultural land. Thank you.